You're listening to the Pursuing Passion podcast with Make It Rain, episode number 1.
Welcome to the Pursuing Passion podcast, where living out your dreams with passion is not only possible, but made real. And now for your host, the authentic ball of inspiration herself, Marte.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Marte. You're listening to the Make It Rain podcast called Pursuing Passion. I'm super excited right now. I have 4 members in our studio with me, and 3 of them are from the Make It Rain crew, and we have a special guest with us. So our Make It Rain crew, we have Justin Metzler, Julie, and Austin Landis. They just do so much. It's crazy. So you guys have to look on our website, helpmakeitrain.org, to see what they're all about, who they are, and how you might be able to get involved. Right now, our special guest, I'm so excited. He's just like a cup of wonderful coffee, just full of life, and like just an amazing guy. His name is Jim Laverty. He is pastor here at Souderton Church in Pennsylvania, and he has a wife, right, and a daughter, and he's also on the board of Franconia Conference, right?
Right, yeah.
Did I say that correctly?
Yes, that's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're talking about service today and what it really looks like, why you should do it, and I have to say, service for me has always been like a drag. Whenever you know you have to go serve, it's kind of like, why? Why can't I just stay in my own bubble and do my own thing? And I remember being younger, I was a Girl Scout, and they'd always be like, we're not going to go camping. We're going to go serve the homeless and serve meals. And I was like, why? Mom, can I be sick today? You know? And she's like, no, you got to go. It's good for you. And I never understood that why it's good for me thing. They just said, it's good. Tap on the back. Go. And I was like, I'm so confused. And you would have a little fun with your friends and stuff, but nothing about the experience really resonated in my heart. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are kind of like me, you know, just at this wonderment of like, why? I mean, it's kind of good. I love seeing people happy, but what does this do for me? Should it be about me? So, Jim, I know you have an incredible story. Austin was kind of filling me in.
Yes.
Would you tell us and our listeners kind of about who you are, your service experience?
I'd be glad to. Well, you know, I think what I found is that service has a way of enlarging our hearts where we can begin to experience what other people go through. And it gets us outside of that bubble you were talking about. And that's what makes me excited about it, is I think that we need that because, you know, we can so easily, sometimes even what we've been through in our lives, we don't realize that there are others that have been through similar experiences and that we can share in that together. So sometimes we're uniquely qualified to be able to serve certain people just because we're made more credible from what we've been through. So, you know, our experience was that my wife and I met in college, and like so many college students, we were looking afterwards and thinking, you know, where are we going to live and what are we going to do for work? And we started right into our careers. Thankfully, both my wife was able to, Wendy, get a job right out of college in secondary ed, which is pretty amazing because the other 4 or 5 graduates in that program were not able to find something in that field that year. So it was really a tough time, tough economy. But, you know, as we spent about 3 years, we settled into a really great apartment, cheap rent. We're stocking money away, and we're thinking, hey, life is great here.
It's going to happen.
We're having vacations at the family home up in Canada and the lake, and thinking, you know, it couldn't get better. But then along that time, we went to this conference, and we started going by all these booths of people that were doing stuff cross-culturally. And we were just struck by it. We thought, you know, there's another world out there of people, and God loves them too. So how do we tap into that? And I think the hard part was, I remember going through like my GRE. I was going to go to grad school. I'd actually been taking classes at Boston University. So it was a real departure. And I was thinking, you know, am I ready to be able to go in this direction? Because I know once I head down this path, I may not be back, you know? And so to this point in my life. And at that point, we didn't own any home, you know, and we were really at a place where there wasn't a lot tying us down. We didn't have kids. So we were really like, okay, you know, God, what do you want to do? And so my wife and I, before we were married, we went down to Costa Rica on a service trip. And I think the most incredible thing while we were there was that we were just taught that you need to learn before you serve people, that you need to learn about them. So don't come in pretending that you already know what they need. Come in as a servant. And so during that time, I think we also realized the cost of serving, that it does come with a price and that it's not something that you enter into lightly. So during that time, we really felt drawn into it. So our hearts were kind of primed and ready when we went to this conference, but it was really there that we said, okay, let's do this. Let's leave our jobs. let's sell all of our wedding gifts that we got and all of our furniture.
That's crazy.
And so it was really, and so we ended up then at that point we looked for an organization doing service in a variety of ways. We didn't want to just do something like teaching English or working as like a missionary's assistant, doing something like secretarial work. We were thinking we want to do something that's really creative, that has a lot of, but we want to be able to do something with people where they're leading, like we're coming in to another culture where they're going to be the leaders and we're going to support them. So that was really what we did. We ended up going with International Teams, an organization that sends teams out all over the world to serve people, whether they be refugees or they be people in restricted access nations where you're not free to talk about your faith.
Wow.
And it was amazing. We ended up in Spain because we just knew it was a country that was that had a very strong religious past, but was very much had gone from being almost a agrarian type of economy to being postmodern in a very short time. And there was unfortunately so many people that knew a lot about God, but that didn't necessarily know God. And we didn't go there thinking that we were bringing God to them. We knew that God had been there and been there all along. And it was more of just bringing an awareness to them of how God was at work in their culture. So that's really the journey, the journey that we were on, that God brought us there. And then later our 2 daughters were born both there in Spain.
Awesome.
So that was an incredible experience. And just through their relationships with peers at school and in the neighborhood, we ended up meeting lots of people. And basically we led teams. We'd have people come over for maybe 2 years and live in the culture, make friends, get involved in running clubs or involved in building coffee houses and other things in the city. And then we also had summer teams that would come over. And we put together groups of Spaniards that were actually Spanish youth that would do pantomime and puppetry. And we would do do these outdoor kind of festivals in the park. And we'd do music. I'd play the drums, and it was just a great experience. All those years we were there from '91 to 2001, and it was just an amazing thing. I think what I learned is how to live simply. We learned to live at the level of the people. We lived in an apartment. You know, it was very bare bones. The first couple months we didn't have any heat, no phone. We were like walking everywhere and still learning the language.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I remember learning about that during that time were 2 things. And one was that first I realized that people had a lot more to give to us than we had to give to them, especially in the beginning. And that was humbling because we had made such sacrifices to come.
Right.
But it was incredible to see some of those gifts that God gave us. And sometimes God changes us more when we step out than the people that we're going to. And that's an incredible thing. It's humbling. And then the other one is that I realized that when everything's stripped away, when you can't speak a language, when you can't when you're not even able to be yourself because you don't have that ability to communicate, that somehow you realize more and more who you are in Christ then. You realize your real identity is who Christ says you are, no matter if you feel valued or not in that society. So those were some of the things that I learned along the way, and they're life lessons that I'm grateful for, and they all came from stepping out. And it wouldn't be possible without a lot of other people coming along with us and making that happen through their financial gifts and their prayers and even coming to visit us and encourage us.
That's awesome. So you're talking about like this huge service experience, like mind-boggling.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about how you actually felt stepping out? Because you mentioned the phrase, stepping out.
Yes.
What is that like? Was there fear? Were you like completely like, I know this is right? What did it feel like?
Right. Well, you know what I think it was is I think in the beginning what was helpful is that both my wife Wendy and I had this shared passion. So I think sometimes being around people that have a similar passion, that really want to give their lives, like they don't see it as something that they realize that they want to invest themselves in others, and that their life isn't just about themselves, and that life is much richer when you get to share it with others.
Yeah.
So to me, that's really what kind of primed it. But I remember when we left, we were like, we felt, some people looked at it and were like, what are they doing? Like, where is this leading? And why would they do that? And we realized that we weren't going because we were these great gifted people that we were going to be a huge blessing to Spain and to the people there. We really just went thinking, first of all, we don't speak the language, we're not doing a lot for for the people there except just showing up and rubbing shoulders and spending time and hopefully growing with them. So I think but the initial rush, I think, of being that age, I think when we were in our 20s at that point, and that's one of the challenges I'll never forget. We met all these people that were like 50s and 40s and 50s, and they were all going going, it's so good that you're going. I'm so glad you're doing that. What a perfect time. And I kind of wanted to say to them, but aren't you supposed to be doing the same thing at your age? Like, why does it always have to be younger people? So I really felt like, I guess I realized even then that we can get caught up in this, where the more we have that's encumbering us, that's kind of weighing us down, can really make it more difficult to be nimble and flexible, to be able to let it go and move into that area of service. And that's one of the things, even now in my late 40s, I'm still working through. How do I kind of strip away the things so I can be available enough and flexible to go where God calls, and to know that God's going to provide? I mean, for 11 years of our lives, God provided for us. And so I know that he can do that. And so I think for anyone stepping out, it's always, find others that you can do it with, kindred spirits. Know that it's going to be something that isn't going to be understood. My own grandmother told me, why are you going across the ocean to do that? They, you know, they're all right. They don't need you. And so, so it's not something understood. But then as you do it, wow, the incredible things that happen along the way and how much you learn. And I think it is until you step out and really test what you believe, and being able to say, can God really come through? That you really are able to see if that happens. And then it strengthens your faith, and then you keep trusting more.
Right.
So
I have a few questions. Man, it's just so loaded. I'm so excited. And if you guys have questions, feel free to just ask away. This is awesome. I feel like I'm getting my little, devotion in or something. I'm like, this is great. So to that person who is on like a millennial like my age, I'm 24, who is like, I have a career. Yes. This is all about me. Focus on me, What do you say to them when it comes to serving? And they're like probably thinking, I don't need to serve. I'll do that later on when I have all this money and stuff and I can just like do it.
Right.
Is there a point? Should they serve now?
Yes. Well, you know what? I wanted to just recognize here, I've watched Julie and Austin and I've heard their story. And I think for me, looking at their lives and the way they've decided to say, you know what, we're not going to wait until somewhere down the road when we're retired or we're set up and we can kind of focus on that. Because you know what I've learned, and this is one of the things I didn't share before, but we experienced the loss of a daughter from cancer. And so I've become more and more aware that, every day is a gift, and tomorrow's not necessarily guaranteed. So to push stuff off like that and say we're going to do it someday isn't necessarily going to happen. And I think in some ways, serving is something where we do it a step at a time. So the radical step that we took to leave our jobs and everything, not everyone's necessarily at that point where they're ready to do that. But I think it's a question of, it's something that you almost begin and you start to weave into your lifestyle. And I think we were talking even last week, Julie and Austin, we were gathered here talking about how hard it is to ask people for their time. And it's almost become, I think, something that, unless we release it, unless we hold it in an open hands and say, this is not mine. This is something that is a gift that could be taken at any time, not to be fearful about it, but to just say, I want to invest it wisely today because I don't know what's going to happen.
Understand it.
And so if we start to weave that into our lives and it becomes a pattern, and that's why I'm so grateful for your guys' example, because I see you living it out. And like even this past week, I called Austin and was like, there's a need that came up. What can we do about it? And I just think it's so cool because I just found with Austin and Julie and with the others that are part of Make It Rain that all of you are just like, hey, let's just dive in and just do whatever needs to be done. So it's like a no strings attached type of giving. Like you're not feeling like it's being done because there's going to be something asked later, but it's like contagious. Yeah. And so for me, I think that's the thing I would say is that you're missing out if you don't start to nurture that. And the other part is just that I guess everything that we've been given so that we might share it. And so that we're not hoarding it. And if you look at sometimes some of these reality shows where people are hoarding, they're almost boasting in the fact that they've got this great deal. But you're like, well, what are you going to do with all that stuff in your basement? So it's kind of like, so I'm kind of like, well, that, you got the great deal and that gave you a rush. But now with all this stuff there.
Yeah. Are you satisfied?
Are you satisfied?
Yeah.
And then you see them doing it alone or maybe with one or two other people. And you just and then you see how hard it is for people to let go of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing in the end is, do we want our stuff to own us, or do we want to be able to see it as tools that are put in our hands to use, that are at the disposal of whatever God wants to use with it? So
I think that answers the question. Now, for the person on the other end of that who's like, I want to serve, I want to use my giftings, all this stuff, but I'm broke.
Yes, right, exactly.
What do we tell them? And Julie, Austin, you guys can speak to this too, because you guys are a good example of, you're not broke for sure. I don't believe that. But at the same time, you feel like you've been exhausted sometimes. I'm sure that temptation comes, and correct me if I'm wrong, to feel like, oh man, like this is way beyond me. How can I do this? So if you guys just want to share a little to that person out there who feels as if they have those gifts, but they don't know how to use them or don't have what they need.
I think for us, one of the main points with Make It Rain and all this other stuff was to trying to get people to integrate the service into their lives. So it's not always going to be, hey, we're going to Alaska or Haiti for a week. It may be coming and helping Julie cook dinner for 100 people some night. So it doesn't really require any money out of pocket to do it. It just might be a free hour or two, and trying to give back some time, because your time is almost as valuable as your money, I think. So trying to find creative ways to draw, everyone in to the service life, is kind of cool.
I like that, because when you think of service, you think of I need to go away on a vacation. Well, not really, on this miserable trip to another country for a month and totally give up everything I know.
That's right.
But that's not true, right? And so what ways have you guys seen, besides some of the ways you just mentioned, of serving in your own lives that are kind of small but impactful, just to encourage others?
Serving for me is just about making, I am second to others. And I think, to me, it's been a challenge to adapt service as just part of my lifestyle. And I always thought about it as task related. We're going to rake this person's leaves or go on this missions trip. And really, it is a lifestyle. It is being constantly aware of people that you interact with daily, just saying hello to a cashier that ignores you, or putting something back when you're shopping instead of just leaving it wherever you are. I just think that it can be as basic as how you treat people as you go through your day. It does not always need to be helping them in a physical, tangible way. I think it's also through
your actions.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love that methodology, because it's not I just serve 5% of my life and then the rest of it is mine. Where do you kind of get that from?
I don't know. Jesus?
That's what I would assume, but I want to ask you so everyone else would know.
We read the book Radical by David Platt, and that just really struck me and changed my life, in that my faith, how I live my life my Christianity is not something I kind of put it on a shelf and pull out when I need to. It's my everyday interactions with my family and my children and people at the grocery store and in my work. And
it's there.
It's there.
That's cool. So what advice do you guys have for somebody who is struggling in that it's their thing? I'm trying to be this person of service, have this heart, but my old ways are holding me back, or so-and-so always walks in and they have the biggest attitude and I cuss them out. What do you do?
Right.
Because that is a habit, getting past that. I remember those days where I'd just be my little brother. I love him so much, but I'd have this attitude of service and trying to be Christ-like, and then all of a sudden he just throws a plate at me or something, and I'm ready to just come out with guns blazing. Yes. What about those people who are just struggling in the mentality? Any advice for them?
Yeah.
I think for me, what made it easy to get involved in any kind of service, whether it's just going somewhere for a day or for a week, is understanding what your skills are and what your talents are, and figuring out how you can apply those to serve somebody else. So, for instance, for me, my background is in construction as a carpenter. So when we had the opportunity to go out to Staten Island for the day, and 7 or 8 of us went to work on a home that was damaged from Hurricane Sandy. And the whole community was a mess. But that's so easy and so natural. It just felt like another day at work. It didn't feel like work, but it felt very natural. You're just going to do something that you always do. So it didn't feel, honestly, that much like a service trip. But we saw clearly the whole community was embracing us. We had lunch with a family down the street. They were glad that we were there. And Tom, I forget his last name, the guy that we
Basil, I think.
Whoever our trip was coordinated through, we met up with him, and he kind of showed us the house that we were working in and gave us our tasks for the day. He was just floored and blown away that we were all there. And it didn't, to be quite honest, it didn't feel like we gave that like we gave that much, at least for me, because it's just something that you're used to doing. It's not a big deal for me to replace a floor or put a window in or straighten out some framing, but it just meant so much to the people in that community. So, if you're able to pinpoint what your skills are, what comes naturally to you, what you're gifted in, and divert those skills and talents, your time and your treasure towards service, it doesn't feel that much like service to you, but it surely does to the people that you're serving. So, for people that are trying to determine, what is it that I can do to serve, understand where your talents lie and start there. I mean, don't force yourself to do something that's completely foreign to you, and it comes really easily.
Yeah.
And Make It Rain's been, as an organization, has been great at finding people that are talented in certain areas and giving them an outlet, finding, connecting people with the skills to the people with the needs and making it happen.
That's cool. So I guess my next and probably last question is, I'm hearing your stories and you guys are claiming that you're getting more out of serving than you're giving, which is like usually not what you hear. You're like, serving, I'm laying it all down and I don't get anything out of it. Right. So is that a misconception in your perceptions that, you only give when you serve? But you guys, I don't seem to hear that. So is that a misconception that we have?
One thing I'll never forget that was a really big lesson for me was that I realized that, giving reflects a lot what's going on in your heart. So sometimes when you reflect on your attitude, when you give, you get to see what's going on. And I had this experience. We were during this trip to Costa Rica with my wife. We were living in this fishing village, and I remember at the end of the week, we were going to spend a week with these families, and it was just very humble. I mean, we were living in a home where we were just crammed in the bedrooms. There was no furniture hardly at all.
Wow.
And we were just like it was just, and I remember at the end of the week, we were going to give away some of the stuff we brought with us. But I remember there was this young girl in our home named Yenny. And she was the one that had almost all the work from her mom put on her. Her brother would be sleeping in the hammock until the middle of the day, and she was up early with her mom helping the little ones. And she started going around and picking things out that we had and putting dibs on them, saying, "I really like that mirror that you're using for shaving. Could I have that at the end of the week?" And I remember I was like, "Well, I kind of need that after this trip still and stuff." And I remember being really offended. But then I thought to myself, "Wow, what's going on in my heart?" I'm thinking, this girl has next to nothing. She has to do almost all the work in this house, more than any other child.
Yeah.
And this is her life. She knows that this is going to happen. Who am I to say that that's selfish? I was just like, wow, these possessions I've been given, I didn't even really, they were given to me. And
wow.
so I think, what I realized is that this whole thing of giving is that it allows you to reflect your heart. And again, it enlarges your heart to realize what other people go through. And so it gives you a richness to life to be able to realize, to treasure what you have and to share it with others, but then also to realize that it's not there just for you. Mm-hmm. And so I think what's sad is that, in a way, what I would say to someone is, if you feel like you're paying a great cost by giving to others, is that you'll find out there'll be a greater cost when you're alone and you have all your stuff, but you're relationally poor.
Wow.
And you haven't had the experiences and your world is small because you haven't met other people and you don't know what they go through. And that's a really sad way to end our lives. And a lot of people, that's what it looks like in the end. If you go to a nursing or retirement home, I have a good friend in one, and that's a pretty hard place to be if that's the way you've lived your life, because it's too late. It's almost like Ebenezer Scrooge. You look at him and realize that, it was great that he was changed, but wow, he was already an older man at that point. How many years did he have? And he could have spent his whole life that way. So
true. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys have anything to say? Sorry, that was awkward. But
I think for me, my kind of story was after the earthquake in Haiti, going down with Jim Frankenfield and Julie and the rest of the team. I kind of had that mentality of where I'm going in guns blazing, I'm going to take care of this. And at that time in my life, I wasn't quite focused on the individuals just because of the destruction, everything going on. It was hard to even emotionally handle it all. But I talked to Jim and a couple other people sharing this story about kind of going out into the community and just talking with people. There was a very few people that could speak English in this town, and this one young guy was kind of explaining to us, his situation and the different needs in the town. And one of us asked the question of what do you need? What's the biggest need here in this community in Haiti? And I'm thinking electric, plumbing. Your house is like falling apart. You know,
Yeah.
we got to rebuild it. You know,
I know, isn't it?
all this stuff running through my mind, and he just looks at all of us and just says, you know, the people here just need Jesus. That's it.
Wow.
And that really kind of changed, you know, a lot of my thinking. That it's more, you know, of a kingdom, you know,
Yeah,
type mindset.
people need hope, you know, something to
Yeah,
hold
so it's
on
more
to.
than just let me fix your house and I'm out. You know,
Yeah.
kind of bringing a new element to it.
That's true. And when you go into these places, like we just got back from Haiti in November, you want to give them all of your materials, but then you kind of realize, like, I don't have enough to give them, like, even if I tried. So what can I give them that kind of will sustain them? And I remember just praying, and God is like, lift your eyes. I think you're looking too low. It's not like heat. Well, they don't need heat. It's hot there. It's not hot. It's not air conditioning, and it's not, you know, like we had trail mix. I remember being on the beach with you guys, and we busted out this trail mix that Julie packed. Julie's like wonderful with food, you guys. Amen
She
to that.
is. Amen
But
to
we had
that.
this trail mix, and this little kid, Haitian kid, comes up to me, eyes wide, and I'm like, "You like trail mix?" Like he's
Yeah.
excited. He's never seen an M&M in his life, you know. And I'm like, M&M, shim-M, you know, like whatever. Who needs this? And it was just crazy, and I just felt so bad about myself. I'm like, God, I'm so rich, you know, in comparison, which comparison kills. We all know that. But at the same time, I'm like, what can I do? And Jim, your story blew me away. That's why I shifted to them. I'm like, anything to say? I'm just like blown away by the concept of service, how we've kind of put it out there today.
Yes.
Totally has even changed my mind more. I love service, but this has provoked something inside of me to say, I think it's time to step out even further.
Yeah.
Even though I might not feel as if I can.
Right.
Kind of stretch a little bit.
Yes.
So you guys, we're pursuing passion, and I just hope that you got something from today, because I'm extremely inspired to go out and, I don't know, serve cookies in the snow right now, whatever I can do. But I hope that we're inspiring you as well, and have a great day. Look on our website, helpmakeitrain.org, for more podcasts, information, ways in which you can serve. There's tons of options coming, and we're excited to see them just explode. So thank you. Have a great day.
You're listening to the Pursuing Passion podcast, a product of the nonprofit organization Make It Rain. Visit us online at www.helpmakeitrain.org.